Local election headquarters. From our studios in East Providence, a debate between Democratic candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Hello, I'm Tim White. Thank you for joining us. I will be moderating this exchange and asking questions, along with my colleague, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Joining us for this debate, Democratic candidates for Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee and Aaron Regenberg. Thank you both for joining us for this debate. And as always with our debates, there is no strict format. We are looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues. But if you're not answering the questions or you're taking too long, Ted and I will jump in. To begin, each candidate gets a 1-minute opening statement. The order was drawn randomly prior to this debate. First up, Mr. McKee, your 1-minute opening statement.
So first, I'd like to thank Ted and Tim for having this debate. I think they're very important, and that's why I've agreed to multiple public debates. So this debate's going to be about about the campaign. So who's most qualified to be governor if in fact that happens? Who's the bridge builder and who's the polarizer? And who's running an honest campaign? And my opponent is not running an honest campaign. He's run a dishonest campaign, and he's run a hypocritical campaign, and I think we're going to have to talk our way through those issues today. But I also want to talk about the things we're doing in the state and in the Lieutenant Governor's office. And I'm happy to be here today to talk about both of those scenarios.
All right, Mr. McKee, thank you very much. And Mr. Regenberg, your 1-minute opening statement.
Well, it's great to be here. My name is Aaron Regenberg, and I've spent the last 4 years as a legislator fighting to pass policies to help everyday Rhode Islanders. I've seen that it's possible to bring people together to win real change, like higher wages and paid sick days for over 100,000 workers in our state. But I've also seen the way that backroom deals for corporate special interests at the State House are holding us back. The drug companies, the fossil fuel polluters, the NRA, these groups that can write big checks, drown out the voices of regular people. And that's what this election is about. Is our state going to stand up for working families? Are we going to fight for universal health care for everyone? Are we going to listen to women who are asking their state to protect a woman's right to choose no matter what happens in Washington? The Lieutenant Governor's office should be playing a leading role in these fights as a public advocate to take on those entrenched interests and bring the people's voice into state government. So if you agree with me that we need to shake things up at the State House, then I'm asking for your vote in the Democratic primary.
Mr. Regenberg, thank you very much. Let's dive right into the questions. Look, we have a lot of ground to cover here today, gentlemen, but I want to address something that has been a point of contention for this campaign. Mr. McKee, you alluded to it in your opening statement there. Mr. Regenberg, you posted a Facebook ad that Mr. McKee says was a manipulation of one of our news reports, and let's just put aside that it was a WPRI story. The headline in the post was, quote, "Investigation, Dan McKee using taxpayer dollars to promote predatory energy suppliers," which was not the original headline on the story. Your campaign decided to take it down. In this era of fake news and media manipulation, do you regret that?
So that's not what actually happened. I think it's very important that WPRI produced a report that found that my opponent has been using taxpayer dollars to promote predatory energy companies that have scammed Rhode Islanders out of $28 million in recent years. That's a problem, and my campaign posted the link to this story in full so that people can read it. I encourage everyone to go to WPRI.com and read that story. We included a graphic that had the anchors, a picture of the anchors from the story, and after Dan McKee complained to the station, WPRI reached out and said, "Can you switch out that picture?" We were happy to do that. The post is still up. The information is all there. The problem is the reality that there are these predatory companies that in Massachusetts, the Attorney General is actively trying to shut down, to ban because of their predatory practices.
Do you think it was an acknowledgement that it might be slightly misleading the way it was originally presented, and that's why you altered it?
What was said to us was that we'd prefer not to have our anchors in a picture connected to a campaign, so we were happy to switch out that picture. The information is all the reality. And I, by the way, I think it's really telling that my opponent has been using that same language of fake news that Donald Trump uses for the same reason, to distract from his record. And that record is creating a website to directly connect consumers with predatory companies that have scammed Rhode Islanders out of more money since he created that website than they did before.
All right, Mr. McKee, you know, as he points out, the report itself wasn't fake news, and the WPRI piece did raise serious concerns that the taxpayer-funded website Empower RI, which you spearheaded, points consumers to some of the same power providers the Attorney General in Massachusetts says are predatory and overcharging their customers. How do you defend that?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the headline. All right, the headline was fabricated, and it represents the type of campaign that my opponent has run. It's been a very dishonest, disingenuous campaign. He took your the likeness of the anchors of this TV station and made believe that to the people out there and advertised it that you actually were responsible for that headline that said I was under an investigation.
And that's why I asked Mr. Regenberg about that. I'm asking you about your record.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to talk about that because the report, if you look at the report, did not indict me. It certainly didn't have an investigation on me as my opponent claims, and then actually use your likeness to do it. In fact, it was a report about Empower Rhode Island. It was a report about me saying that we set up a website that you can shop your electricity very safely. It's simple, and you know whether you save money. I did it last week. I saved the entire increase that is being proposed that I went and fought against. I'm the only politician at that hearing, fought against that last week, and I shop my electricity safely.
Are there power companies on that website that have been flagged by the Attorney General in Massachusetts?
The people on that website have been vetted by the Division of Public Utilities to be on that website, and that they have not had complaints off of that website. The problem is, and we've addressed this in a letter to the Division of Public Utilities, to please, make it a practice so that when somebody shops their electricity, immediately when that contract is ended, that it doesn't take an action by the ratepayer to cancel that, immediately it goes back to the national grid. And we were on the record on that back in March. So when you don't try to solve a problem and all of a sudden you exclude the people from the opportunity to save money, as many businesses had in shopping their electricity, I think that's a big mistake. The Empower Rhode Island website is safe, it's simple, and you know where you save money.
Your response.
Well, let's be clear, that website has directly connected consumers with companies like Veridian. Now, Veridian is a company that actually admitted in a lawsuit based on their predatory practices, targeting low-income consumers, targeting vulnerable consumers, and overcharging them. They paid $18.5 million in fines for that. My opponent, Dan McKee, has gotten one piece of legislation passed in his 4 years as lieutenant governor. It was a ratepayer giveaway to those same companies that in Massachusetts they're trying to shut down. He actually brought up Veridian Energy in the committee hearing in support when he was supporting that legislation. So this is really unacceptable.
I'll give you the final word on this.
This is another dishonest depiction. If Aaron actually read the legislation, right, in the legislation it says that it empowers the Public Utility Commission to set up a program that could expand the number of providers, electric providers, as long as it was in the best interest of the consumer. So if you had read the legislation, instead of just trying to push back against it just because it was a legislation I passed, then it was set up to protect the consumers.
It's legislation for ratepayers to guarantee the profits of these same corporate utility companies that have overcharged Rhode Islanders out of $28 million.
I think we have litigated this topic enough. We're going to go to Ted.
All right, one of the biggest issues in every election is health care. I want to ask both of you about health care. Mr. McKee, I'll start with you. You've criticized Mr. Regenberg over his support for single-payer health care. I'm going to ask him about that in a second, but I want to talk about you first. You've indicated your approach for Rhode Island would be to double down on Health Source RI and Obamacare. Residents, though, have complained that there are relatively few options on Health Source RI, high deductibles, high premiums. What specifically do you propose doing to make the plans on Health Source RI more affordable?
Well, first of all, before the exchange was set up, 12% of the state of Rhode Island was uninsured. Today, 4% is uninsured. So you don't change direction. You try to improve it, right? You try to improve that. I think that there's ways that you can do group purchasing for the business community, the small business community that's not there. I think there's ways that you can protect against what's happening in Washington right now, where it's taking away potentially rights of people who are pre-existing conditions. We need to defend ourselves against what's happening in Washington right now. And also I think that you can do something to help, which I did in Cumberland. I helped lower our health insurance costs in the town of Cumberland by making sure and educating people on what it costs, and we should have a menu approach to things that we shop every day. Understanding emergency rooms cost more money than going to the urgent care, and cost more money than go actually to the doctor. So there's many ways that we can make sure that we try to contain that cost. and I hope that we're talking about the single pay. You said we're going to come back and talk about the single pay, which Vermont has dismissed as absolutely untenable in terms of the fact that it would put
well,
such a
that
burden
was,
on the,
in fact, my question to Mr. Regenberg about single-payer health care. Vermont, another small state, did spend, I believe, 4 years trying to create a single-payer health system at the state level. They abandoned the idea after finding it would nearly double the size of the state budget. And the governor in Vermont, a Democrat, said small states, he feels, can't do it on their own. Shouldn't you listen to the mayor of Vermont since he actually tried to do this on single-payer?
Well, first of all, I don't know what reality my opponent is living in. It's not the reality that I see every day when I'm talking to Rhode Islanders who are getting crushed by the cost of health care. I talk to people every day who are putting off needed medical care because of sky-high deductibles. Families are getting strangled by premiums that keep going up and up and up, and no indication of stopping. Blue Cross and Blue Shield is asking for another double-digit rate hike, at the same time as they're giving their CEOs major bonuses, as you've covered, Ted. I talk to seniors that they're cutting their pills in half to make them last longer. They're choosing between putting groceries on the table and getting their prescription drugs.
The governor of Vermont didn't disagree with you on any of that, but he found that this single payer at the state level he felt would not work for a small state.
So there are very large political obstacles to taking the corporate profiteering out of our healthcare system. And those obstacles rallied very strongly in Vermont. We're talking about the prescription drug companies, the private insurers, the for-profit healthcare chains, folks that have made maximum contributions to my opponent. We need to have state leaders that have the guts to go up against those powerful entrenched interests. The legislation that I've introduced would save Rhode Islanders money. And don't take my word for it. There's an analysis from the University of Massachusetts that found that the average family under this system would save $4,000. And it does that by taking all of the waste and inefficiency in our current system. And there's a lot of it. The corporate profits, the CEO bonuses, as you've covered, the marketing and advertising costs, the administrative expenses, the duplicative billing, and putting all those resources where they belong, which is healthcare for our families. So my opponent, who to my knowledge has never actually put forward real solutions to our healthcare crisis, he can stand with the status quo, he can stand with the private insurers and the drug companies, but I'm going to keep fighting to make sure that healthcare is a right for
Mr. McKee,
everyone.
we all hear it. People do not like the current healthcare system. Your response?
Let's talk about why the governor stopped it up there, and he tried for 3 years to make it nearly double the size of the state budget. Required large tax increases that were going to hurt residents and businesses. This is his own words. And was going to run deficits in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's an impractical way. What it shows here is Aaron, what I started the show at, who's got the experience, the management experience, the experience to run budgets, the experience to run numbers. He doesn't. And so he would actually put down a proposal like this and back it up. It's a lively experiment the state of Rhode Island we're proud of. He would actually create a very risky experiment, fiscal experiment, just to get his name in lights to actually accomplish something, and it would really hurt the state of Rhode Island.
30 seconds, Mr. Regenberg.
The way a single payer works is it takes all of the costs of our system, deductibles, co-pays, the cost of premiums, the cost for businesses, and puts it into a single payer that creates efficiencies and savings for our families. Every other developed country in the world has this system. Many of those countries have actually developed it from state and province level. In Canada, their national healthcare system originated with one province, population of 1 million, similar to Rhode Island, that created the system. It saved so much money for residents that other provinces copied it, and ultimately they brought it to the national level. We need to stand up for healthcare for everyone. We need to be able to go up against those pharmaceutical corporations, those private insurers that are backing Dan McKee.
I want to remind everybody you're watching a debate between the two Democratic candidates for Lieutenant Governor. Gentlemen, we're going to go to a rapid fire section right now to get through a lot of topics quickly. I'm looking for a one-word answer from each of you. Mr. McKee, you get the first one. Rhode Island lawmakers are considering a bill called the Reproductive Health Care Act, which would codify abortion rights in state law. If you were governor, would you sign or veto the bill?
I'd sign it.
And Mr. Regenberg?
I've been proud to help lead the fight, unlike my opponent, who just went on the radio a few months ago and said that it's not a real issue.
Sign it. You would sign it. Yes or no, do you support continuing contracts for public sector unions?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Was that, explain what that is.
Continuing contracts, so when a contract expires...
Is that the green...
So when a contract expires, the contract language would remain in place while the collective bargaining agreement is negotiated.
Yes, I wouldn't add to it, though.
That was a big issue this year in the legislature.
We're going to keep going. Should Rhode Island legalize recreational marijuana? Yes or no, Mr. McKee?
No.
And Mr. Regenberg?
Yes, and we need to be careful about how we do it.
Is this yes or no?
If you do not win the primary,
is this yes or no or no?
I'm the moderator, not you, Mr.
Okay.
McKee. If you do not win the primary, Mr. Regenberg, will you endorse your opponent in the general election.
Absolutely.
Mr. McKee.
Yes.
Who are you voting for governor, Mr. McKee, in the primary?
Governor Raimondo.
And Mr. Regenberg.
I'm running my own race.
Who are you voting for governor in the primary, Mr. Regenberg?
Lieutenant governor is an independent office, and I'm keeping the focus.
Unclear
There's some
as to
big
why,
difference
why
in
you
this
can't
race.
answer that question. It's a good proxy question for people trying to understand where you might be on this issue.
I'm focused on the lieutenant
All
governor's
right,
race.
we'll move on. Final question in rapid fire. If he wins re-election in District 15, Mr. Regenberg, do you support giving Nicholas Mattiello a new term as Speaker of the House in January?
We need some new leadership.
Okay, and Mr. McKee?
Yes.
All right, Ted?
All right, I want to turn to some of the critiques we've seen during this campaign about both of you. Mr. Regenberg, I'll start with you. One of the most common concerns I hear about giving you the LG's job, putting you one heartbeat away from being governor, is that you've never had a traditional 9-to-5 job. Can you talk about what professional work experience you feel has prepared you to manage a nearly $10 billion state budget and more than 10,000 workers if you were to become the governor?
When I talk to Rhode Islanders, the experience that I hear they want in their state leaders, number one, is someone who they can trust is actually going to stand up and fight for them, who's not going to give in to corporate lobbyists, whoever can write the biggest check or put the most money into a super PAC. And number two, they want leaders who actually have a clear track record of bringing people together to win real change. And that's been my experience, that's my record, whether it was leading the fight to give Rhode Island's 20,000 tipped workers their first pay raise in 20 years to make it a little easier for moms and dads hustling tables, parking cars to make ends meet, whether it was leading the fight to give 100,000 workers in our state paid sick time so folks don't have to send their kids to school sick, whether it was creating new clean energy programs to expand the benefits of wind and solar energy to families across our state, whether it was last year passing legislation around fentanyl testing strips that's going to save the lives of folks going through this terrible drug overdose crisis, whether it was founding and directing a citywide nonprofit in Providence, the Providence Student Union, that has brought young people together to win real change in our public schools, like bus transportation for thousands of kids who are walking 3 miles through the snow and rain to get to class. So when I look at my experience and my record of bringing people together, winning change, often over powerful, entrenched corporate interests who are trying to block it, I will stack that record up against Dan McKee's.
All right, Ms. McKee, you've made experience a major topic in your campaign. Do you hear there enough to let him become the governor?
Of course not. I mean, those are the type of experiences that would lead you to believe, lead us into a single pay health care that'll double our state budget and raise taxes across the board double digits. So yeah, of course he doesn't have the experience to do that. And he keeps on alluding to the corporate, type of ththings. He's just way off base on that. It's very dishonest. He's taken donations from lobbyists in thousands of dollars. There's 20 or more of those have donated to Aaron. He doesn't talk about that. He also talks about a super PAC. That super PACs. Well, he's actually brought on a super PAC in D.C. to run ads against me over the next 10 days or 5 days or whatever it is to the campaign. Tens of thousands of dollars that he's brought in to kind of support his dishonest campaign. So that type of behavior is very important to be a governor. You need to have the integrity, you need to have the character, you need to be honest. He's had a very dishonest race, and he doesn't have the qualifications. Lieutenant governors do become mayors. I was the chair of the National Lieutenant Governors Association.
Governors do become governors.
Yes, lieutenant governors do become governors, and I was the chair of the National Lieutenant Governors Association, and eight lieutenant governors are now governors today. It happens. This is a very critical piece in this election in terms of make sure who has the experience. I have the community experience, working with nonprofits with Boys and Girls Club. I have had the business experience. I've had a successful 6 terms as a mayor where I flipped around a very, very difficult fiscal area and also improved our public schools at the same time. And now as lieutenant governor, I've been working all around the state of Rhode Island, visiting communities, small businesses, health issues, veterans issues.
All right,
working on the national grid, and we'll actually recoup $8 million back to the ratepayers. And I'm the only elected official that has gone after that.
Okay, I want to let Mr. Regenberg respond.
Well, first of all, Dan, just because you don't like a fact doesn't mean you can call it dishonest. I want to be very clear. My campaign is not taking a dime from corporate PACs, from oil and gas companies, from drug manufacturers. We've got and that's a strong contrast to my opponent's campaign. Now, I'm proud to be supported by a lot of organizations fighting the good fight that do have political action committees, like Planned Parenthood, like the Coalition Against Gun Violence, like the Sierra Club, like teachers and nurses and carpenters and bus drivers and working families and their unions across our state. There's a big difference between our campaign and yours. Now, my opponent has been backed by literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in super PAC spending from people like an offshore drilling billionaire who put $50,000 to prop him up last week, like Wall Street financiers who put $75,000 into a super PAC for him the week before, like the opioid executive who made his fortune off the OxyContin crisis, who put $20,000 into a super PAC to get Dan McKee elected. Those issues matter.
All right, Mr. McKee, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond before we move on.
That's another dishonest issue. The money that came in was years ago. I haven't taken any dollars from the person you just talked about in this.
But you acknowledge you took that money at some point?
And gave it back to some of the organizations that we felt locally were dealing with. On the opioid issue, I brought in 28 communities that are suing the very people that he says I'm in the back pocket of for millions of dollars. So he thinks that somehow, he thinks in his world that because of you're a lobbyist, and he's thrown his General Assembly members on the bus, he's thrown the lobbyists on the bus, he takes money from the very people he takes money from, he believes that you can be bought off. We went out and not only sued the very company that he talks about that's supposed to be buying me off for millions of dollars, guys. So the notion that it's another misrepresentation, it's another dishonest headline in a lot of ways.
I'm sorry.
Because he's not being honest with the people. Those dollars that he's talking about were in previous years. I've acknowledged them. And it was because of education, because they believed in education. It wasn't to buy me off so that they could put
Mr. McKee and Mr. Regenberg, with all due respect, a lot of this is inside baseball. I want to get to a policy question. Let's move on, because a lot of the people at home, they just hear a lot of anger here, so let's move on to a specific policy question. And it does sort of fold into what we've been talking about here. At last check, Pro Charter Group has dropped $75,000 to support you, Mr. McKee, and Teachers Union, AFT, has spent $40,000 to support you, Mr. Regenberg. So I want to talk about education. Look, we have the same region, same population demographics, active teachers union, but Massachusetts has a world-class public education system, and Rhode Island is at the middle of the pack or lower, depending on the rankings that you look at. Mr. Regenberg, what do you view as the single biggest thing holding back Rhode Island's K-12 public education system?
So this really has been the passion of my life, improving our educational opportunities for our young people. That's why I founded a citywide nonprofit that's helped young people come together and win real changes in our public schools. It's why I've continued that advocacy in the State House, introducing legislation every year to improve the facilities funding of our schools, which is unacceptable, winning fights for millions more dollars for our English language learners who are ranked bottom of the nation for the support and opportunities that they're getting. Those are fights that I haven't seen Dan McKee engaged in. We have a lot more work to do to make our schools the best that they can be. In Massachusetts, in the 1990s, there was a process around the Massachusetts Education Reform Act where all the different stakeholders were brought to the table, teachers, students, districts, up and down the line, and said, what's our 15-year vision? How are we going to get there? And then let's get everyone on the same page and row in forward together. That's never happened in Rhode Island. I think the Lieutenant Governor's office is actually in a unique position to use the convening authority to get those conversations started, to have everyone moving in the same direction.
Mr. McKee, did you hear anything in there that you liked? Education is front and center for you as well?
Well, the thing I didn't like is somehow that he says that I haven't been a leader in education in the state of Rhode Island. That's absolutely ridiculous. So not only as a mayor, put $50 million into our schools when I was a mayor, started an office for children, youth, and learning, developed a public school that is now 10 years strong, and it's the very people that Aaron says that he wants to help out. We're taking kids that are 70% free and reduced lunch, bringing them all to college. The valedictorian didn't speak any English when she showed up in the school. Now she's valedictorian and she's attending classes at Tufts University. I have worked a decade or more on improving public education. I was the leading person in the state of Rhode Island that changed the school funding formula, wrote the report, brought all the mayors on board, and millions of dollars are now going to communities throughout the state of Rhode Island, including Providence, well over $30 million as a result of that report and that work. So for Aaron to sit here as a newcomer to the territory and make judgments like that when we put in more than a decade of work, and several decades of working with young people, with Boys and Girls Club work and whatnot. We're showing how you actually can get results. We're showing how to close the gap for the Latino students in the state of Rhode Island. It's being done right in Providence at Achievement First, the public school Achievement First. And we need to make sure that we keep on working hard because our economy depends on it, and our office is interested in education. And for Aaron, it's another misrepresentation, clear misrepresentation. There's been no one
Mr.
who's
McKee,
worked in
so I keep
education
looking
more
at the
than
clock. We have a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you 30 seconds and a 30-second response, so go.
Well, to be very clear, what I said is that I've been engaged in fighting to win more funding for our English language learners, and in our 4 years in state government, I haven't heard you help out. We've been able to win more funding. There's a lot more work to do there. We need to create a public school system that works for all of our young people, and we're not going to do that by drawing so many resources out that schools are having to close after-school programming, to close music and arts. That's happening in Rhode Island. There's a difference on education in this race. Donald Trump's Education Secretary Betsy DeVos publicly praised Dan McKee last year for being a champion for that education agenda. That's a different approach to education.
Thank you, Mr. Regenberg.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, it keeps on slipping in these things that are not true and dishonest. I chaired the National County Governors Association last year. At the meeting, which I chaired, I introduced the Secretary of Education. I was on Duncan's Secretary Mayor's board, and I supported President Obama. I don't support President Trump, and I don't support the current Secretary of State, Secretary of Education. Now, as far as what we've done, what I've done is help people learn how to read and write and do math and get into college. Aaron is teaching them how to protest. The very schools that he's working in have 10% proficiency in math and reading when they're graduating students. That is absolutely a shame. And what I did was I did something about it. And so there are ways that we can do it. You don't teach, teach kids how to protest, that's fine, but let's teach them how to read, write, and do math.
Yes or no,
We've taught young people to be leaders and to make change in their communities.
Well, they need to read and they need to write, Aaron, in order to move on and contribute
yes
to our
or no,
economy.
do you support binding arbitration for teachers? Yes or no?
No.
And Mr. Regenberg?
Yes.
All right. Look, it's been a pretty contentious campaign. I have 1 minute left as I look at the clock. A lot of disagreement between the two of you, clear differences. Mr. Regenberg, can you say something nice about your opponent?
I think Dan's a great family man, and I really appreciate that.
And Mr. McKee, something nice about Mr. Regenberg?
He drives a nice car.
He just complimented your family. You're going to compliment his car?
I don't know his family. I have never met his family.
I don't have a big taxpayer-funded SUV that he used his office to buy a new one of. I'll give you that.
Final shot. All right, listen, gentlemen. A lot of ground was covered there. I want to thank both of you for coming into our studios and taking part in the debate with Ted and I. We both know it is not easy. And look, if you missed any of this debate, you can always watch it online, WPRI.com. Remember, primary day is September 12th. It's a Wednesday. So get out there and vote. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week on Newsmakers.